What we've got to do is we've got to separate the two conversations that we're having. We have a short-term responsibility of creating a budget within a matter of months. I don't think it's any more apparent than today with your press conference and your fantastic questions that this is a very complex issue that we need time to go through the committee process and reach an agreement on. Even the talk about the sales tax, whether there's a minimum, where does it start out, what is the consumer going to see at the pump? Those are questions that just weren't able to be answered today. In fact, in regard to that, I would suggest instead of a minimum, there should be a maximum. Because of any tax that's out there, that sales tax is going to be the most intrusive to the lowest income people in our state. And that's where it's going to hit hardest. So our plan, absolutely, when we came out with it, suggested that we are prioritizing roads and bridges and infrastructure. We said that we will do that in the short term, but what we are looking forward to is going through the process. We will have Commissioner Zelli in our conference committee, in our committee, in a matter of an hour, where we're going to start the process and go through it step by step so that we can get that agreement that the governor was talking about. The governor said he wasn't really wed to the numbers. He wasn't sure if those were the exact numbers we needed. He wasn't sure if the revenue numbers was what we were needed, and that's all we're asking for. We're not suggesting anything different. We're just asking for time to do this in a responsible way.
Well, you guys have not even agreed on the size of the problem. You're proposing far, far less per year than the governor is, whether it's a tax hike or not.
Correct. Well, the reason we came out with the plan that we did, Pat, is because we wanted to show Minnesota that we will prioritize that. And that's where our dollar funding came in. We even said that we would go to the general fund, if need be, to raise more revenue for our budget issue this year.
When do you expect to do a long-term transportation plan? Are you looking at that this session, or are you going to need more of that time to figure out the problem?
Don, I think that starts today. It starts today in our committee meeting. As we spoke with Commissioner Zelli several times, I think he understands the process that we're going to take, and he appreciates that, because the sooner we can all get on the same page and reach agreement of what that number is, the quicker we can get to solving the problem.
Well, what do you think the number is? What is the number?
Well, Pat, that's why I'm sitting here telling you that I think it's irresponsible to create a long-term plan if we don't understand and agree with what the need is. We've seen lots of reports. We've seen the TFAC report. We've seen CTIP just came out 2 years ago. They came out and said they were fully funded for a 10-year plan. And now all of a sudden we've got a 0.5% increase on it that would generate $325 million a year. We just on the backs of 2 years ago, $2 billion tax increase. It seems to me that the proposals right now by the governor and by the Senate simply increase revenue without first getting us all around the table to agree on the need.
So do you think there is a need though to fix? I mean, do you have any agreement that there needs to be more money in the system?
Sure. I would say on a long-term basis there's a need for the structural formula to be revised and to be more sound.
What about $10 billion over 10 years? Is that just too big a number for you?
That's part of the problem, because we hear 10 billion, we hear 6 billion, we hear 54 billion. You know, that's the issue, and I think Minnesota really would appreciate the fact that we take a step back, we go through this process so that they can get agreement, they can get all their representatives to agree on the number, and then absolutely we'll talk about funding.
So you think the MnDOT staff isn't being partisan? Are you saying the MnDOT staff isn't nonpartisan, or do you just?
Oh no, I have full faith in MnDOT. I think MnDOT's doing a fantastic job. I agree that it is absolutely a bipartisan issue, but when they come to our committee and they go through the process, they'll help all of us understand where they're actually at.
Why isn't the study that was finished in December of 12 credible with you?
Well, that's a great question. I would suggest that if that study was credible at the time, the governor had the Senate, he had the House, he had his office, where he could have increased these taxes absolutely in our last session. If everyone thought that report was actually the gold standard, then we actually would have had the increases, and I think you'd all agree on that. But something was there that suggested we needed more time, and that's what we're asking for today.
The governor's plan, I think, is a great plan. I think it's honest, it's straightforward, it really gets to the investments that we need to make. You know, we have a roadway system that's aging. It's not going to become any easier to do this work as time passes. We've been hearing from the business community that they need these improvements so that we can get people to their jobs and goods to market, and we know that 1 million people are going to be in the metropolitan area and all over the state within the next 20 years or so. folks are going to need to get around. So it's a great package, and it's very, very similar to my package. That's not a surprise because, of course, there's been a lot of analysis, a lot of science that goes into really figuring out what the need is and what the gaps are.
There's still a lot of controversy over a sales tax increase, a gas tax increase, whether it's the wholesale level or right at the pump. So how do you think you can get the House on board with any kind of a gas tax increase?
Well, I wake up every day with a sense of renewed hope and optimism. I wouldn't be doing this work if I wasn't optimistic. So absolutely, I think if we engage Minnesotans in the conversation about what these investments really mean in terms of improving their lives, in terms of shared prosperity, economic competitiveness, fixing our roads so we avoid car repairs, fixing our roads so we avoid congestion, doing transit improvements with sales tax in the metropolitan area so we avoid building ever wider interstate freeways that are even more expensive to get folks around. I think, if Minnesotans really engage with their elected representatives, we can absolutely do this.
Finally, the governor stressed it was key to provide sustainable income, dedicated revenue for transportation going into the future. Your plan does the same. The Senate Republicans are saying, well, maybe there needs to be more general fund dollars, and there doesn't necessarily need to be any kind of a tax increase. Is that possible?
Well, if we were to just do a one-time general fund expenditure, it'd be over in a year. We will have built maybe a couple of bridges and about 30 miles of roadway, and then it's done. This is an issue that has been in the making for many, many years, and clearly we need to be building our roadways and fixing our bridges and building out our transit systems for the future. And just a one-shot deal, 1 year, is just not going to get the job done. This is about an investment that is a return on the dollars that we put in, and it's about setting ourselves up for the future the way the generations before us did for us. It's our turn now to do that.
You believe you can come up with a plan that does not include new taxes, but does solve the problem. The governor said essentially he wants specifics. Do you have any specifics right now?
Yep, we're still working on pulling that together, and sometime the first part of February, Minnesotans will get a chance to hear a little bit more about that. But it does, and I'm sure no surprise to you, it involves existing revenue. We raised taxes by $2.1 billion. We have $1 billion surplus, and it's really unfortunate. And I was sorry to see the only solution that the governor can offer is to the minute middle-class families see gas prices come down and have some relief. The only solution the governor and the majority leader in the Senate Transportation Committee can offer is new revenue and higher gas taxes.
The key coming from that announcement was that this would provide sustainable new revenue 10 years into the future and further. So would yours do the same if it's just using existing revenue?
Well, it's important to note our economy is improving, and every year the economy improves. Guess what? We collect more income taxes, we collect more sales taxes, which all contribute to the economy. For example, right now, the license tab fees, which the governor is asking for a very large increase in our license tabs, have increased just from last year to this year because of the improving economy. Our approach will be a little bit shorter because we believe as the economy continues to improve, we do not want to collect money that the state does not need. That's exactly what happened last year. We collected too much money as state government. We took money that was not needed for this budget, and that's exactly what's happening with Governor Dayton's plan.
When you referenced existing revenue, does that include general fund dollars?
Yes, it would. The sales tax, for example, on everything to do with auto repairs and vehicles is something that makes sense to Minnesotans. We ought to be taking that sales tax and collecting it for construction of roads and bridges. That's an existing revenue stream that is going into the general fund now that we would just simply ask to move to roads and bridges.
Finally, Senator, as a member of the minority in the Senate, are you working closely with the majority in the House to try to parlay a bill that reflects your priorities as well?
Well, certainly we have talked, but the House has their ideas. We have our ideas. As you know, in the Senate, we do not control the discussion. In the Senate Transportation Committee, our job there is to make sure Minnesotans that oppose the new revenue and their voice is heard in the Senate Transportation Committee. But yes, transportation is something that all Minnesotans can agree on as a priority, and we're certainly willing to work with the House